Hello and welcome into another edition of Jacket Sports Weekly and the last edition of Jacket Sports Weekly for the year. Riley Holstinger joined alongside by the doctor, Caleb Yager. And Caleb, since it's the last episode of the year, I can't have you crying on me over the course of this episode at all.
I'll try not to, Riley. I'm going to try to keep it together. But what do we have going on Waynesburg sports? Let's focus on that first.
Well, first we'll talk about the baseball team. 2-2 record this past week. It's been a pretty good record for the baseball team when we talk about the weeks that they've had in the past compared to this week right here. Just ran into a tough Washington and Jefferson team on Monday, but other than that, ended up walking away with back-to-back wins to start the week against Grove City and two pretty impressive victories for Waynesburg.
Yeah, two pretty good programs. And against Grove City, it was a 3-1 victory. Corey Fisher pitched 8 innings and just had a really impressive day. But that game against Teal just showed how resilient this Yellow Jacket baseball team is. Down 8-3 heading into the 7th inning, and then they chipped away at the lead. I talked to Perry Cunningham after the game, and he said, our goal wasn't to score 5 runs in that inning. It was to score 2 or 3, and then we'll make the lead a little more manageable to try to overcome. But then, going into the 9th inning, down 8-6, and then Mike Bell hits a triple to tie the game, and then Cody Ray hits a walk-off single, brought in a runner to home, and it was just a great way to celebrate. And then Washington and Jefferson happened 15-1 loss and an 11-1 loss, and it was just kind of a rough day all around for the Yellow Jackets on the road.
Yeah, going back to that Grove City game that happened last Monday, just very impressive on the resiliency of this Waynesburg baseball team to bounce back after losing to this Wolverines team twice, to go ahead and kind of punch them in the face and win 3-1. And then talking about that Teal game a little bit there, just great performances all around by Mike Bell. 3 hits, 3 RBIs in that game. And then Alec Inglemore to really shut the door on that Tomcats order. Ended up throwing for 4 innings and got 2 more outs to go with that as well. But he only gave up 4 hits and no runs at all. So just a really great job of Inglemore, who's had an up-and-down freshman season, to be able to come on in a big moment and just shut that door for this Waynesburg baseball team. But against Washington and Jefferson, it's one of those things where this is the best team in the President's Athletic Conference. It's going to be tough for Waynesburg to really compete against them. They're not really right there at this moment, maybe a couple years down the line, but W&J's tough year in and year out.
I was going to mention about Alec Inglemore. Going back to that Teal game, yeah, the W&J games happened, but going back to Teal, Alec Inglemore, he was really one of the reason why the Yellow Jackets were in that game. I mean, you got to get it done on the offensive side, but you got to get it done on the defensive side too. But Alec Inglemore just really pitched his heart out, and that's why Waynesburg was able to stay in the game.
Absolutely. 3 games this upcoming week for the Yellow Jackets, all against Westminster. Host them twice on Thursday and then travel there to New Wilmington on Saturday. Moving over to the softball team, very impressive season so far. 3-1 this past week, 16-5 on the season all around. Mercy ruled Chatham this past Thursday and then lost game 1 against Bethany, 2-1 on Sunday, and then also ended up just coming back from that in game 2, winning 11-4. So this has been a very impressive season for this softball team. And
a good response from the Yellow Jackets on Sunday. Losing 2-1, Waynesburg had 5 errors. Wilson pitched another great game, but just that response, I mean, they were down 2-0 going into the bottom of the 3rd inning, and they said, well, how about we score 11 runs in this inning? And that's what they did. But speaking of the comforts of home, 12 straight home games for this Yellow Jacket team. It's going to be interesting when they go back on the road to see how things are going to change and to see if they can adapt to those road games.
Yeah, definitely. 14 games left in the season for this Waynesburg softball team. Currently 3rd in the President's Athletic Conference. Jeremiah Miller will come on to talk about the Waynesburg softball team a little bit later in the show. But 4 games this upcoming week. 2 at Grove City on Monday and then 2 Thursday at Geneva. Moving over to the track to talk about the Waynesburg track and field team, competed this past weekend at the Westminster Invitational. Kat Henderson, a very impressive performance in the long jump. And then talking about some other contributors to this Waynesburg women's track and field team, Michaela Rose 2nd in the 200-meter dash, and then 4th in the 100-meter dash. Gloria Reed 3rd in the steeplechase. Just a very impressive showcase from the women's team on Saturday.
And Ivy Allen placed fourth in the high jump, but going back to Katherine Henderson, it's been interesting to see how she has progressed throughout the season, and each time that we seem to have a meet to recap, Katherine Henderson just keeps going up and up and up, and then she finally put in the hard work and she won the long jump at 5.24 meters, so good for her.
Yeah, she's definitely priming herself for a big performance later this season at the President's Athletic Conference Championships. Still a couple more meets to go for this Waynesburg track and field team. There weren't any team results from this past weekend, although they're just working on individually improving like how we saw with Henderson right there. So expect her to have a big finish to the rest of the year as well. Moving over to the lacrosse team, 0-5 on the season, 0-3 this past week. 4 games left in the year, though. Pretty favorable schedule for this Waynesburg lacrosse team to hopefully pick up maybe 1 win by the end of the year.
And the things it's going to have to change are these scores. I mean, 19-2 loss against St. Vincent, 19-3 loss against Grove City, and a 21-5 loss against West Virginia Wesleyan. Like you said, maybe a favorable schedule, but things, just to put it simply, are going to have to change.
Absolutely. One of the highlights from senior day the other day, senior Grace Zablosky ended up notching her first 2 goals of her career right there, so definitely a great milestone to have on your senior day. Moving over to the men's golf team, 10th out of 12 teams at the Grove City Invitational. On Thursday, Luke Deal had a very impressive performance, 15th out of 76 competitors, and then also the team competed once again at Teal on Saturday, 5th out of 6 teams there. So the Waynesburg golf team still in action. They'll compete today at Washington and Jefferson and then compete Thursday at Bethany. And then to wrap up all the Waynesburg sports news, the men's tennis team host Franciscan Wednesday afternoon at 3:30. But when we come back here on Jacket Sports Weekly, we'll dive into that 2-2 record this past week from the Waynesburg baseball team with Austin Bechtold.
Well, the Waynesburg baseball team went 2-2 within the past week. Some games that are just completely memorable and some games that they want to forget. But here to break it all down with us today on Jacket Sports Weekly is our baseball analyst, Austin Bechtold. And Austin, take us throughout the week with this baseball team getting the walk-off win against Teal, but then going up to Washington to face the Presidents and completely just turning things around.
Yeah, Caleb, good to be with you and Riley. Let's start with the good. So the first game, that game being against Grove City, 3-1. Corey Fisher was absolutely fantastic. 8 innings, gave up 1 run, struck out 2. But something that I really noticed, no walks. Very efficient day for Corey Fisher and for Waynesburg to be able to get some offense that they were able to put around him. Bryce Badillion had 2 RBIs, went 2 for 4 on the day, and Alec Anglemore was able to record the save. So being able to have younger players like Anglemore and Badillion be able to complement the veteran of this group, Corey Fisher, who had just an absolutely fantastic day, was able to get that Grove City win. And then the 11-inning affair against Teal was another game that was fallen from Waynesburg's grasp, but they were able to grab right back, tie it in the 9th, and win it in the 11th. So it's just another thriller game before, as you mentioned, W&J, 1 to forget. 2 to forget, really.
Yeah, really. And talking about this Waynesburg baseball team, it's been an up and down season so far. That win against Grove City on Monday was certainly a high of the team. And then you look at this past weekend and on Sunday against Washington and Jefferson right there, just the 2 blowout victories by W&J, just not what you want to see if you're a Waynesburg baseball fan here. But just talking a little bit more about the week specifically, it kind of highlights the struggles that Waynesburg's had all season with the ups and downs with the pitching staff, because Monday you had that great game from Fisher, and then he follows it up on Sunday where he gave up 10 hits, 7 earned runs, and 3 innings. And then Alec Anglemore, a guy who who we've been talking about a lot of this season too, a young player up and down. He ended up having a great day out of the bullpen on Wednesday against Teal, but then he's also had some rough outings too. So what do you think of this inconsistency?
Yeah, tough start for Joe Sablak and Corey Fisher in those 2 games. It's tough. I mean, W&J is at the top of the conference. They're 9-0 in the PAC for a reason. They've absolutely dominated baseball in the PAC for how many years? One thing that I did notice is a positive for Teal before I go into some inconsistencies in that Teal game. Waynesburg had 3 sacrifice hits, 2 sacrifice flies, and 2 stolen bases to be able to come back into that game and be able to win it with a Cody Ray walk-off in the 11th inning, which is, I think, a very good win and what we thought could have been a momentum win, but being able to face the juggernaut that is W&J didn't really help as much. But to some of that inconsistency that you mentioned, Riley, I think part of it is the younger players on this team. I don't think much of it has to do with Perry Cunningham being in his first year as the head coach. I mean, he's been around the program, 14, now 15 years. So I don't think it's much of that. I just think that they're growing. They're trying to build something. And part of that is there's been games where there's been 4 freshmen in the starting lineup, and we've seen some defensive lapses as well. And just a team that needs more seasoning, I think, under their belt. And that doesn't just come, I think, with more games in a season. It comes with just, not to make an MLB term, but it's kind of like the Pirates and getting new players in and having to develop them a little bit. I think it's obviously it's not the same situation, but I think in some ways it's similar, where you have to grow your players and have them being able to experience some of the circumstances that come with college ball, and also having the weather factor in, where games are being rescheduled and shuffled around. I'm sure it doesn't help much either.
Now, I want to go back to the 2 W&J games, and in each of those games, there was at least 1 inning where there was a ton of runs scored. In game 1, 7 runs scored in the top of the first inning for W&J. And in the second game, it was 8 runs in the 4th. Talk about that, and what are some of the factors that contribute to those runs?
Yeah, 15-1 and 11-1, 26-2 is what Waynesburg was outscored. I think just not being able to get consistent outs and one mistake being piled up on another, and whenever you might have an error go through your legs or something like that, and a ball that gets away from you, and a bad count that just completely spirals. And that's just what it is. I think spiral is the right word, and just not being able to recover in a quick amount of time that a good team is going to be able to take advantage and capitalize.
Well, the baseball team having an up and down season, but the Yellow Jacket softball team having a great start to the season so far, and that's what we'll talk about next with Jeremiah Miller right here on Jacket Sports Weekly. We want to welcome you back to Jacket Sports Weekly on WCTV. Now we're going to talk about the softball team going 16-4 so far on the season. Here to talk all about it is our good friend Jeremiah Miller. And Jeremiah, what a weekend splitting the series with Bethany. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so first game, Sydney Wilson doing what she usually does. She only gave up 2 runs, but didn't have the bats behind her as usual, only 2 hits on the day. For Waynesburg, 1 being a 7th inning home run by Sydney Sine. That's all that happened in game 1. Now game 2 still started out a little slow. They were down 2-0, but then when that bottom of the 3rd came around, all 11 runs scored by Waynesburg came in that bottom of the 3rd. So the bats really lit it up in game 2 against Bethany yesterday.
Yeah, not only in that game against Bethany yesterday, but this whole past week, you end up going and you mercy roll Chatham twice this past week, and then you have that explosion in game 2 against Bethany where they won 11-4. So how impressed have you been with these bats as of late for these Yellow Jackets? Because at the beginning of the season, we talked about it, that they needed to have some support behind Brookman and also by Wilson, and now they're finally getting it.
Yeah, absolutely. I said in last week's episode they need to win 3 of at least 4 against Chatham and Grove City. They were supposed to play Grove City today, game got postponed. Got to play Bethany. They did take 3 of 4. The 2 wins against Chatham were crucial, and it was good to see the team go out and mercy rule and taking them 5 innings in both times, because with where Waynesburg wants to go, not only this year in the future, they got a mercy rule team like Chatham. And a good way to split the series against Bethany. They played against a great pitcher, and to really dominate the way they did, because they faced the same pitcher in game 2 they did in game 1. Really just got the bats going finally, and it's good to see the team come back. My biggest thing is the rest of the season. Sydney Wilson finally got loss in the or mark in the loss column. See how she comes back with that. She's not a seasoned vet. She's only a freshman, so it'd be interesting to see how we see Sydney Wilson come back from a loss like that.
No, I want to revisit that first game against Bethany in the 2-1 loss. Waynesburg had 5 errors in that game, and like you said, the bats weren't going for them. Can you just talk about that and why they ended up losing that game and only scoring 1 run?
Well, yeah, the errors were a big part. We talked about that. The middle infield is probably the weakness of this team as far as it comes to fielding, but those players make it up when it comes to batting in the lineup, but didn't have that on Sunday in game 1. So there's got to be consistency from both sides of the field, defensively and offensively. Just didn't have that in game 1.
All right, Jeremiah, I'm going to break out my magic ball here. We have 14 games left in the season for the softball team here. Currently 3rd in the President's Athletic Conference. I don't think really many people expected this team to do as well as they've been doing lately. Now, we definitely expected them to be an above-average team, but to be in the top 3 in the PAC is something else so far this season. So what needs to happen for the Yellow Jackets to walk away this season with the President's Athletic Conference title?
Well, to answer first, Riley, you were saying no one had thought about this. Yeah, in the preseason poll, they were 6th and 7th. So to be in 3rd in this position right now with the back end stretch coming up is crucial. What they need to do is just what I said, be consistent on both sides of one, offense and defense. You're not going to win a game if you're going to have 5 errors and only 2 hits. That's just not going to add up. Got to have the bats. You got the pitching rotation between Brookman and Wilson that can really make you go on a run for a championship. Just got to get the bats and runs in behind them. And Waynesburg might not only finish 3rd, but honestly, they pull a couple upsets here, might win the whole thing.
Now, besides Brookman and Wilson, what is one player out of that entire softball team that you think needs to step up this season or has been doing a good job so far for the team?
Yeah, who has stepped up, Brent Hunter. You know, she was last week's Athlete of the Week by Waynesburg University. She's been the biggest one to step up, especially on the offensive side. But Wilson and Brookman, they don't only get it done pitching, they're also 2 of the biggest bats on that team.
That's all the time we have for softball. When we come back, Meg Berry is going to join us to talk about the men's and women's outdoor track and field teams, so don't go anywhere.
You're watching WCTV, where we aim to bring you the best local coverage of what you care about most. Everything from local businesses to hometown sports and the latest weather. We're keeping up to date with what you need to know about issues that affect our campus and our community. We're telling the stories that matter, celebrating our past, our future, and our potential. So tune in for all the latest buzz right here on WCTV Channel 14, Waynesburg.
The Waynesburg track and field teams took action last Saturday at the Westminster Invitational, although not all the Waynesburg athletes took part in the Invitational there. Here to break down the Waynesburg track and field team, we have Meg Berry once again, resident member of the Waynesburg track and field team and also our analyst here on Jacket Sports Weekly. So Meg, kind of take us a little bit into the Westminster Invitational and also about the throwers heading up to Slippery Rock to get some action as well.
Yeah, so it was a 2-day meet this past weekend. Westminster actually doesn't have a hammer circle or a javelin runway. So the throwers who do hammer and javelin went to Slippery Rock on Friday and competed there. And for both days of the meet, it was not the best weather. It would go from really pretty skies, nothing there, to hail, rain, really bad wind, and the second it would start to rain, the temperatures would just drop dramatically. So that definitely had quite an aspect on competition this weekend. For example, some of the throwers, including myself, were throwing a good 10 meters for javelin behind what they usually throw, especially if we were throwing it in the hail. So that was kind of rocky with the weather, but sometimes you just have to work with it.
Now, one of the highlights from the weekend was Catherine Henderson winning the long jump with 5.24 meters. Just talk about her performance individually on Saturday and just how she's grown throughout the season.
Her performance was just stellar, especially with the bad weather. She overcame it and just competed the way she needed to, and it was really impressive to see that, and she's definitely grown as an athlete, and I believe she did win long jump at indoor packs as well. So just to continue and take that energy from her win in packs and just move forward in the year is great, and she's actually ranked first right now in the pack for long jump, and she's actually even ranked second in triple jump, which isn't even one of her main primary events. So she's just really taking that energy and that success that she had in the indoor season and pushing and taking it through the outdoor season.
Yeah, Henderson's been impressive all season, not only in indoor but also outdoor as well, as you mentioned right there. She was named indoor field MVP back at the indoor PAC championships. Now, kind of moving over to take a look and preview the rest of the season. Still have a couple meets left to go before PACs and everything. Although, really, you won't have the full team competing together until around the President's Athletic Conference championship time. So what strides do you want to see from your team from now until you get to Milan Park and compete in the PAC championships?
As a team, I just feel like everyone needs to take advantage of whatever good weather we have and to just make that meet their best meet possible and compete to the best ability if they can. Because if you get good times and you get good distances and good marks, that's exactly what you need heading into the PAC championship. So I truly believe that if you just take advantage of the good weather and any type of good weather that we hopefully have, that'll definitely help this team and to just continue to grow on the success that we've already had so far this season.
Now, as Division III athletes, you've been actually able at these different meets to compete against Division II and Division I talent. How has competing against those higher levels been able to help you guys improve throughout the season?
It definitely has pushed us to do better because we still continue to compete really well against these D1 and D2 schools, and it almost brings out a super competitive part of us because we push ourselves to do better so that we can compete with these better athletes. And I think that just motivates the whole team to do better when we get to PACs, and it's only the PAC schools.
Well, thank you, Meg, for your expertise all season long following the Waynesburg track and field teams. And when we come back here on Jacket Sports Weekly, I will be sitting down with Waynesburg University Athletic Director Adam Jack. Back here for our interview segment on Jacket Sports Weekly. Riley Holsinger sitting down with Waynesburg University Athletic Director Adam Jack. Thank you so much for joining me today here on Jacket Sports Weekly. And you've kind of been attached to Waynesburg sports ever since your playing days with the baseball team here. Also coaching the baseball team as well a little bit at Waynesburg as well. So how much easier do you think that it makes you to kind of be more involved and interested in Waynesburg sports, coming from the aspect that you were an alumni and also a coach here?
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's very easy. This feels like home. I came here in 1994, and there's only been 2 years when I was away for graduate school that I haven't been associated with Waynesburg in some way, shape, or form. So after graduation, I went off for 2 years and then came back as an adjunct. And I started coaching with Mike Humiston back then, and even before Mike, Dwayne Lanzi for a couple years. When I became a detective over in Westmoreland County, then I put in for the head coaching position at the University of Pittsburgh Greensburg, so I was their coach for a few years. When I came back here to teach full-time, Coach Humiston and Perry Cunningham took me back, and I helped them out for a few years there also. So I'm pretty excited about being in this role. It's been a little more challenging than I would have anticipated when they offered me the position in July of 2019 pre-COVID. But I certainly am really excited about the future and trajectory of all the athletic programs here at Waynesburg.
And then talking about the one that's a little bit more maybe near and dear to your heart, the baseball team, since you were a player and a coach here for the Waynesburg baseball program, you have to be very excited about the renovations that have happened to the field, and now it's turned into the baseball and softball complex, so that's something to be very excited about.
Yeah, absolutely. I was tasked with figuring out how to renovate the softball field, and we needed new turf at the baseball field, and it was one of the first orders of business when I came on as athletic director. So I started doing research, and it's one of the few multi-purpose complexes out there, but it's a premier facility for both baseball and softball. takes a lot of work, and I have to say our athletic department, facilities department work very hard getting that fence up and down and that mound on and off, but it's a professional grade mound and fence. We spent a whole lot of money on getting it to that quality. That fence is used at some Division I facilities out there, and that mound is used in spring training facilities and some Division I training facilities. So it's really a situation where we allowed for the best of both worlds for both Coach Shimmick's softball program and Coach Cunningham's baseball program to get more games in, and so far so good. The maintenance facility folks have been fantastic about working with us on makeups and rainouts, because this spring it's been pretty rough. This has been a pretty cold and rainy spring, but so far we've done it seamlessly. So I can't thank all those folks enough, and the coaches in the department going out there to help out where they can. Both teams have helped out. So yeah, the facility was just originally a concept of how can we get an upgrade for both teams and work together on it. It's very much in line with my school of thought throughout athletics and the university's goal of collaboration, cross-departmental collaboration as well as cross-team collaboration. So we just moved it that direction.
Mm-hmm. And then talking a little bit more specifically about the baseball program and one player on the program, Corey Fisher, battling Ewing sarcoma right now. He's been an inspiration to mostly everybody here at Waynesburg University. Just how amazed have you been with his battle and with him being able to still pitch on the mound and still dominate on the mound?
He has been such a fantastic story for the baseball team, inspirational for, I know, the gentlemen that play with him, as well as Coach Cunningham and the rest of the coaching staff clear up through the department. What he has done thus far on the field, dealing with what he has had to deal with off the field, is inspiring to all of us. So I continue to watch every time he's out there, and I know that Coach Cunningham has thought it has been a fantastic example for his team of leadership and perseverance, and we just continue to pray for him and his recovery.
Yeah, and you have a close connection with Coach Cunningham, but another new Waynesburg head coach that I want to talk about that you have a connection with, the new head football coach, Dr. Cornelius Coleman. You both ended up playing athletics here at the same time. You played baseball. Dr. Coleman ended up playing on the football team. So how excited are you to bring him on board to coach the football team?
I am very excited about Coach Coleman. He and I were in school together, and we crossed paths through athletics quite a bit. I have kept in touch with him over the years. I've followed his career, and I had a new administrative role for Coach Smithley. So when I asked Coach Smithley to move into this administrative role, I went directly to the provost and president and said, I have the guy that I want. I have the person that I think can lead us into the new, to where we want to be with this program. And they were with me. I can't, again, the support I've received from the administration here and the decisions, whether it's the baseball softball complex or hiring of coaches, I'm very excited about how involved the administration is and what the reins that they've given me to move these things.
And Dr. Coleman won't be the only thing, I guess, new to roam the sidelines for this Waynesburg football team. Some big news that you just told me about before this interview, some renovations possibly coming to John F. Wiley Stadium. Would you like to speak more about that?
I'd love to. We have, it's being released on social media today as a coming soon. We have a 6-figure renovation to the home jacket locker room for the men's and women's soccer teams, the football team, as well as the women's lacrosse team. It is going to be along the lines of what you'd see at big Division I and Division II programs, and that is only being achieved through very gracious donation from an anonymous donor.
And then talking about how you brought Dr. Coleman on board to coach the football team here, recently brought a new head coach on board, this time to coach the wrestling team in the wake of Ron Headley's retirement. How excited are you to bring on Aaron McKinney, and what has impressed you about McKinney through the whole process?
Yeah, we're so excited about Coach McKinney. Coach McKinney has brought leadership from the high school level. He was a 100-win wrestler at Division I Lock Haven. So he not only has a skill, but the leadership of a program in the past. He is the most humble person you ever wanted to meet, and I have loved thus far him asking questions. He's the consummate learner. He wants to gain education in all those areas. So he's asking about budgeting. He's asking about what different areas he can expand into with camps, and we're so fortunate that Coach Nero Bonaventura is there to ride sidecar with him to assist in all these changes we want to make, and it's hard to replace someone like Ron Headley. We hope to be able to move things forward. Coach Headley has been such a blessing to us over the years, not only on the tennis court or on the wrestling mat, but also just as a man in our department, a good Christian role model. He ran our Bible studies in the department, so he does a lot more than just coach wrestling and tennis.
Yeah, Coach Headley, certainly a great guy, and a little bit of the theme of this interview so far seems to be about all the new things that are coming within Waynesburg athletics and everything. And to kind of continue with that, the esports program, something that's been teased, something that's going to be a little bit newer, and we can expect to hopefully see more of it throughout the next school year. So what updates do you have for us about the esports program?
The esports program we started discussing about 18 months ago with a donor, and this donor became excited about it, which started my education on esports. So I'll date myself here. Probably the last video game I played was Tecmo Bowl or Double Dribble. I have not played a lot of esports. I'll be the first to admit. I always use the analogy, if someone asked me, would you rather learn how to fly the space shuttle or learn how to play competitive esports, I'd have probably chosen to learn how to launch a space shuttle. But it all was born out of a training at the NCAA conference that Randy Pettit attended, Assistant Athletic Director Randy Pettit. He brought the information back and said, this is the new thing. The NCAA is going to sanction this eventually, and it's going to be it's a huge industry. So I started to do research. I started to talk to a donor. We went back and forth, and the donor was all in. So I started to educate myself, and I feel like I've gotten to at least a remedial level. We work with a consultant to help us make all the choices, but we are going to have the premier esports arena in this region. Mm-hmm. We are the first, to my knowledge, the first PAC school that is going to introduce competitive esports. We're working with the local high school superintendents, the intermediate unit, to establish some relationships in the region. So yeah, this 25 gaming rig esports arena is fantastic, and we're very excited about the prospects of growing that here and growing it in southwestern Pennsylvania for the local high schools.
Yeah, and that has to be something that's probably a little bit harder to maybe get off the ground, because it's not one of those traditional sports. It's not like you're just bringing on a football team or a baseball team. This is something that's been really growing over the past few years. So that's definitely have to be a little bit of an adjustment for you and everybody else in the athletic department to kind of get used to building this program.
Absolutely. It's certainly a new path for me, and I love a good challenge, and that's where we're at here. There are some very good competitive schools in this region. I'm happy to announce that we are hiring Matt Pioch, assistant women's basketball coach and assistant dean in student services, to be our full-time director of esports and head coach. He is going to have a part-time assistant coach and a graduate assistant to help us grow this program the way that we want to, the way that we know we can, and enhance, once again, putting Waynesburg University on the front end of a new endeavor, which is what we always try and want to stay ahead of the pack. And I don't mean the pack by the President's Athletic Conference, but that's, I guess, a play on words that I would use also. We want to stay ahead of everybody in these cutting-edge technologies, much like I've always tried to do in criminal justice with the driving simulator that you got to see and the laser shot simulator. We want to start to do the same things with athletics and some of these other areas.
Well, once again, thank you so much for joining me right here on Jacket Sports Weekly. And this will be our last episode of Jacket Sports Weekly for the semester. So we hope that you enjoyed all of our content throughout the year. And make sure to catch Jacket Sports Weekly when we come back next year.
This has been a production of Waynesburg Community Television.